course, he did this wonderful story of the Republican Party from 1860 all the way till 1960, and then skip past 50 years. And then today, which Jon Stewart famously said, the history of the Republican Party, Lincoln and Roosevelt and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
And today,
right.
because, obviously, and the students very smartly pointed out the 50-year gap in his legacy. But he did not know about the Monsanto bill, which is actually where I was going with this.
Oh, right.
No, he didn't. He said he had no idea about it. An intelligent student asked him about it, and he's like, "Well, he'll have to look that up and get back to them." So,
you don't think he was just dodging? I think he.
I actually think he hadn't heard about it. I don't know. As I watched Rand Paul,
saying he hadn't heard about it is like this former press secretary for Obama saying he didn't know anything about drones.
No. I honestly think, Terry, that we live in two different universes in America today. Unfortunately, there's a red universe and a blue universe. And in the blue universe, all of us have heard about the Monsanto bill because, we look at Think Progress, we listen to liberal talk radio, we watch MSNBC, and they talk about these things. Mm-hmm. Fox hasn't mentioned it, so why would Rand Paul see it? Rush Limbaugh hasn't mentioned it. He lives in a different world from the world in which we inhabit. So what we know is the Monsanto bill. He's like, well, is this a voice vote? And it was, is this was attached to the appropriations bill? I don't know. I believed him when he said he heard of it. I didn't believe him when he said that he never opposed the Civil Rights Act, given that he opposed it just 2 years ago.
And he didn't know what was in there on the appropriations bill. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't buy it. I don't buy it.
That's a big bill.
Not that I should start trusting him. I'm not going to.
Let me raise one more issue with you, Terry, because in terms of Washington's function, this is getting no press, and it concerns me. And that has to do with the Republicans shutting down the government, not in the obvious ways, but in the unobvious ways. And that is by preventing institutions like the National Labor Relations Board from working, in preventing the courts from working. They're basically filibustering all of Obama's nominees. And they're doing it even when the nominees get a unanimous approval from the Senate Judiciary Committee. So I want you to think about this. There's some 15 senators on Senate Judiciary Committee. And actually, I think there's 17, 9 Democrats and 8 Republicans. Mm-hmm. So the 9 Democrats agree. The 8 Republicans agree. So those 8 Republicans who say this candidate's fine, they're not some wacko liberal, we can deal with them, they're a moderate, join that with the 55 Democrats in the Senate. That's 63. That's enough to have to avert a filibuster. What Republicans are doing is they're saying that even though we're okay with these nominees, we can't allow them on the courts because the courts are currently skewed in conservative ways. The D.C. Circuit Court of Appeal, for example, is 4-3 conservative to liberal, and there's about 3 or 4 open seats. Now, if Obama could appoint judges the way every other president could appoint judges, then they would have a majority Democrats on the court. And Republicans are saying, even though we're fine with these nominees, we're still not going to allow them to go on the court. And in the case of the National Labor Relations Board, it's even worse. The United States Supreme Court has said, for reasons that completely they astound me, that there's 5 members of the board. If they don't have 3 members on it, the board can't function. There are only 2 members on the board, and the Republicans have refused to allow any other new people be appointed because they say, we don't like the law. We don't like a law that allows unions to exist. We don't like a law that allows workers to fight back against employers because that makes employers earn less, and they're the ones who buy us in Congress. So we can't defeat the law because we don't have enough votes to get past a presidential veto to end unions forever, which is what we want to do. Instead, we're going to take the branch of government that enforces workers' rights, and we're going to make sure it cannot work. And Obama recently did recess appointments, and then the D.C. Court of Appeals, the one that he can't change because they're filibustering him there, said, nope, those recess appointments are no good. Basically, you cannot enforce the law. That even though you're required by the Constitution to enforce the law, Mr. President, you cannot enforce the law when Congress refuses to let you enforce the law. And nobody's talking about this.
That's the key thing, Mark. That's the key thing. We are living in, an age where ignorance is an industry. It truly is an industry. What is going on in our society, except for, very few sources, and you've mentioned many of them, the people do not know. The ideologues are destroying the country one little tiny step at a time. They do it under the table. They do it by going around whatever legislation they can, by the tactics that you've given out already, by attaching amendments people don't know about. And the American public is kept in this ignorance, and it's kept in ignorance on other issues, which I do want to get to at some point. But it's frightening, because I've been doing a lot of study, and I know you don't like this comparison, but I've been doing a lot of study about the rise of the Nazi Party recently in Germany back then. And, of course, everybody says it's all Hitler's fault, and they want to blame Hitler, and obviously he had a whole lot to do with starting it.
I blame German people. Listen,
yes,
the majority allowed him to take power.
That's the point.
There's always going to be evil, crazy people around.
Yeah.
The question is whether it's like to me, it's like blaming the shooters in Colorado and Tucson, and I just say no, they're mentally ill, deranged human beings. There are always going to be them in every society. I blame the people who allow the deranged to get the guns. I don't blaming a deranged person is kind of like, I don't know, blaming your dog for eating a bone. I mean, they're just they're that's ingrained in them.
That's exactly the point. The ambassador of Germany back in the 1930s actually wrote to the United States. I'm sorry, it was one of the consuls in Germany. It wasn't the ambassador. Wrote to the State Department saying, the people are pushing Hitler. The people are demanding these kind of strict and violent subjugation of the Jews, etc. Not even, I mean, the Hitler regime actually retreated a little bit from some of the violence. This is before the war, and asked people to just sort of calm down and everything else, and stop turning in your neighbor every other day. And
I'm not sure about that part. You'll have to show me that part.
Oh, I will send it to you if you want. I mean, it's really kind of amazing.
Interested about that, but it's true
but
that
the people had been so led in ignorance and misled by ideologues, just like is happening in the United States, that they actually pushed the politicians to get more and more extreme.
Well,
and that's kind of what's happening in the United States.
Before I segue into your topic, which I promise I will do, I just want to mention one more thing about these filibusters. When I worked in Congress, when I worked in the House of Representatives, this was back in 2003, the Democrats filibustered some, not all, but a few extreme Republican judges. I mean the ones that said racist comments, the ones that found the Civil Rights Act did not exist, the ones that were particularly horrible to women's rights. I mean extreme judges, really extreme people. And what they did is they allowed George Bush to appoint 90% of his judges, but they picked 7 or 8 really extreme human beings, people like Robert Bork, for example, and they said, we're going to filibuster them. And the Republicans got so upset by them filibustering 5 or 10% of Bush judges that I remember they brought cots in, and they did an all-night filibuster, and they really said, let our judges be. Now the Republicans are not filibustering extreme liberal judges. They're filibustering moderate judges. They're filibustering judges that the same people who voted for these judges on the Judiciary Committee because they couldn't find anything wrong with them are then refusing to allow them to have a vote on the floor. Because I just pointed out, you add the 8 Republicans on the Judiciary Committee to the 55 Democrats, that's over 60 right there. So they're being actively hypocritical and saying, yes, this judge is qualified. Yes, this judge can sit on the bench. I have no problem with this judge, but I will not allow the judge to sit on the bench.
Because they are afraid. They are afraid that they will not get reelected because the Tea Party will jump all over them. And so therefore they will do what the evil Republicans want them to do.
Because they just don't want to play fair.
No, of course not.
I mean, again, look at the National Labor Relations Board. If they hate unions and they want to abolish them, they should have the decency to put forward a law to abolish unions. But
why would you do that when you can do it so much more easily?
So my point is this. The Republicans made such a big deal over Democrats filibustering, really it was less than 10 Bush judges. Now the Republicans are filibustering 100 or so Obama appointees. And I know he's trying to get the gun bill done, and he's trying to get the immigration bill done, he's trying to get the budget deficit bill done. But I would hope, come summer, that Obama could do a tour and say, our courts need to function. And let's start playing back hardball with hardball. I think Harry Reid, the Democrat, should say this. I'll tell you what I would say if I were a senator. Because they're filibustering all of Obama's judges, all right, I as a senator promise I will never, ever, ever allow a vote on any judge when a Republican's president for this same time period. It's been 2 years. Sorry, the first 2 years of the next Republican president gets no judges from me.
And the only problem with that is
fight fire with fire until the whole system falls of its own collapse.
Okay, there you have it. That's what's going to happen.
Well, but it cannot be the right that a Republican president gets to appoint judges and a Democratic president doesn't. It cannot
but if we fight that fire with that fire, we just increase the ideologues on both sides, and
well,
we're stuck.
I want to hear what your answer is. I'll tell you what. Think about it, Terry. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll get back to see if you have an answer on that, and maybe even over ignorance, maybe an answer there too. Folks, if you want to, okay, folks, if you want to call in, it's 202-889-9797. 202-889-9797. We'll be right back with more of the Raucous Caucus right after this.
These programs touch the lives of virtually every American family. Yet with so much misinformation out there, Americans are pretty confused about their future. You deserve the truth. For more than 30 years, the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare has been leading the fight to preserve our nation's most successful programs. Join us and find out how to keep Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid strong for all generations. Learn more online at thetruthnow.org.
You're listening to WPWC We Act Radio, 1480 AM, weactradio.com.
Welcome back to the Raucous Caucus. This is Mark Levine, and I've got on the line
Terry D. Kester.
And Garland Nixon will be joining us in just a few moments. Now, Terry, you were saying something about Americans being ignorant. I don't know what you're talking about. Why? I think 20% of them could place France on a map.
I'm sure they could,
15%?
If they were given a little bit of a help.
Well, maybe so. They'd have to be told where Europe is first.
Americans are surfing in ignorance. I mean, they really are. I mean, and then, in my opinion, the end of this fragile country is going to happen because of the institutionalized ignorance industry. Hello, Fox. But it's not just Fox, it's politician at every level. For one thing, everything is caught in the immediate, the current event, whatever it is. And unless it's 9/11, the immediate is usually kind of irrelevant. There's always much more to the story than we ever talk about or hear about, except on the Raucous Caucus. It's actually, I believe that ignorance is America's biggest industry. I mean, all you have to do is watch a little bit of commercial television, commercials, TV shows, surf the garbage on TV, or watch the news. 90% of it is touching the surface of issues and never telling you what's really going on.
Wait. Reality shows are not real, Terry?
I'm talking about news shows aren't real.
That's like telling me that wrestling isn't real. Please, don't.
No. News shows are not real. They don't tell you the whole story. They don't give you the perspective. As Greg Pallas calls, National Public, the radio, National Petroleum Radio. I think there's a lot of truth in that. One of the things we've talked about, is obviously what's happening with the gun legislation, which is immediate, and we're facing the tax situation. But let me just give you one other example, and you probably know this, Mark. But has there ever been a peace treaty written and established with North Korea, between the United States and North Korea?
No, there never has been.
Wrong.
What? There's an armistice agreement.
President Carter had negotiated with North Korea. North Korea wanted one thing back in President Carter's term. They wanted one thing. This is before they were nuclear, etc. They'd already been punished economically for decades. They wanted a peace treaty with the United States, period. That's what they asked for. And President Carter had a written, established peace treaty with North Korea.
It must not have been ratified then.
It didn't even quite get that. Well, it sort of got that far, but good old Reagan came in, if you remember, and he announced the axis of evil. And he, in President Carter's words, threw the peace treaty in the wastebasket.
Well, actually, I think the axis of evil was George W. Bush. Here's what I do know. At
any rate,
Carter Reagan's a bit before my time.
Reagan literally did throw it away.
Oh, I believe that. I was going to step forward then to almost the same thing happening another 12 years later, or 20 years later, I should say, because Bill Clinton, I do know this because I was involved in watching it this time, established a very fascinating safeguards. It was like a treaty. It was an agreement he did with North Korea, and we literally, the International Atomic Energy Agency had cameras in the nuclear plants where they could watch everything that North Korea did. We gave them some food aid, basically, to pay them off. But by all accounts, they were not working on their nuclear weapons in 98, 99, 2000, after that treaty.
Even so.
Bill Clinton did, until George W. Bush came in, referred to them to the axis of evil, ignored them after September 11th, and they very clearly developed nuclear weapons during that time.
That we have continually pushed North Korea. You can hate communism or whatever you want to do. I want to hate such a stupid word, but we have pushed North Korea into a corner its entire existence. We were the nation that was attacking them back then. However you want to frame it.
It's hard to get too sympathetic for North Korea now. I mean, they have a
But
brutal...
But you've got to understand their paranoia. For 60-some years, we have officially been at war with North Korea. We have never negotiated a peace treaty. They have asked for a peace treaty.
That's true.
So they have been pushed into this corner. I don't know if they'd accept a peace treaty now or not. I suspect they might be interested to get the United States. They view United States as the big evil person. Well, in their context, it is the big evil person because we refuse to say we're ever going to be at peace with you.
The reason I'm just hesitating about all this is, first of all, you say they. You're really referring to the tiny 0.5% that controls that nation.
Well, no, wait a minute.
The vast majority of people are in gulags. I mean,
that's the same percentage that controls the United States. I mean, come on. You know.
I'm not going to put us in the same camp as North Korea. I don't know.
I'm just talking about control. You can talk. I mean,
military-industrial
complex. Let me give you another example.
Okay. I mean, I will agree with you that we pushed North Korea. I mean, I remember when North Korea was developing nukes, and I was working in Congress at the time, and I was telling people on the phone, 60 days, 90 days, they're going to have a nuclear weapon, and Bush was doing nothing about it. But certainly Clinton managed with both carrots and sticks to contain North Korea.
And President Carter went way beyond anything Clinton did.
Yeah.
But is that reported? Is that spoken about?
I hadn't heard of that.
It is not. Again,
treaty.
And I'll give you another example here. Why can't we reform the tax code? Now you think every politician says they want to reform the tax code. Well, they don't want to reform the tax code. President Obama doesn't even want to reform the tax code. The tax industry is one of the larger industries in the United States. It is to the advantage of the tax industry to keep the tax as complex as possible. And let me give you one quick example. In its annual reports, Berkshire Hathaway, with what's his name, the biggest.
Warren Buffett.
Yes, Warren Buffett. Their annual report is 108 pages. That's their annual report for the whole year. Obviously, there's a lot more detail and stuff they don't report. How many pages would you guess their tax return would be, Mark?
500-600?
17,839 pages.
Wow!
Yeah. That takes a hell of a lot of tax accountants to work on it.
Wow.
And that's the same thing throughout the American...
17,000 pages.
17,839 pages.
That's impressive.
That's Warren Buffett himself explaining it.
I bet TurboTax doesn't quite cover their return.
Probably not. Even my taxes as self-employed over the years have run 99, 100 pages, which is absurd.
Yeah.
But that employs people.
Yeah, mine's about 60.
It's a huge deal. There's over 2 million tax accountants working in the United States. There are trade associations, of course, for tax accountants. Tax accountants make good money. Average pay is $30 an hour. Do you think that industry wants to have the tax code simplified? No way. No way. And these are the kind of things that Americans don't even talk. President Obama hasn't even pointed out this kind of nonsense. Nobody talks about it. The industry's too big.
See, I think what Republicans do is kind of what they used to do in college basketball games when I was a kid. And they're running out the clock. What they're doing is they're going to make guns take 6 months. And then immigration will take 4 months. And then the budget will take 8 months. And oh, hey, we got an election in 2014.
But even the Democrats.
And so we can't get to tax reform. We can't get to
But we won't.
filibustering.
Have you heard of a single Democrat, president or otherwise, talk about the tax industry and the power that it has, the legislative lobbyist power that it has? Nobody has mentioned.
I can't recall one, but one I do remember that Democrats talk about, or certainly Bernie Sanders, our one socialist in the Senate, talks about.
Yeah, wonderful, Bernie.
How few corporations pay taxes. I looked this up recently because tomorrow is tax day, and I was curious because Republicans were always complaining about, corporations, they have to pay 35%. That's the ones that pay the taxes. But it's interesting. So what would you say were the percentage of corporations that paid no tax as recently as 1986? So this is 25 years ago.
Oh, I would say it's got to be at least 20%.
In 1980s, 25 years ago, very good. 25 years ago, 24% of corporations paid no taxes. Right. 25 years ago, 76% of corporations paid their taxes. More than 3/4 paid taxes. Now, fast forward to today. What percentage of corporations pay zero tax?
Oh, we're probably up to 30 or 40.
Oh, it's higher. Keep going.
Oh, my God.
Keep going.
It can't be higher.
Keep going, Terry.
50, 60,
higher.
70, 80.
69%, almost 70. 69%.
Oh my
More than
God.
2/3 of American corporations pay zero, zilch, nada, not a penny in taxes. And this came up to mind recently because you remember the Carnival Cruise Lines, that wonderful cruise lines that apparently lost power in the generators, and they had a floating. Remember, they had a little food, and there was like sewage running through the. Okay, so the United States Navy, to its credit, stuck a boat tow and towed this ship in. Right. So now, get this: they sent them a bill. The Navy said, "All right, Carnival Cruise Line, it costs about $1 million.
Pay for the tow."
Carnival refuses to pay back the Navy. They're saying that nope, there's an international obligation to help people in distress. So we screwed up. Our people were in distress. You helped us. Thank you. You're going to get a nice thank you note, but we're not going to reimburse you. Guess how much Carnival Cruise Line paid in taxes this year?
0.
That's correct. They're one of the great 69%.
Well, at least we know that much. We don't know about the tax industry. And, without confronting that, and without our politicians talking about it, and our news organizations talking about it, people don't have any idea what's going on. They didn't know it was a peace treaty with North Korea. They don't know how big the tax industry. You probably know this because this was a thing that was attached to another financial bill. I think you know this one. I think we've talked about it. That the CDC, we've got an epidemic of gun death and gun shooting and gun everything else in this country, right?
Sure, right.
This is the U.S. of A. The U stands for shoot anybody, anywhere, anytime you want. It's the U.S. of A of A of A.
You shoot anybody. U.S.
Shoot anybody. Yeah.
You shoot anybody.
You shoot anybody.
All right.
But there's an epidemic of this. Now, should the CDC investigate if it's an epidemic, which it certainly is? Yes, the CDC should investigate. Can it investigate? No.
It used to.
Yeah, it
they
used
actually
to a long time
before.
ago.
No, that's true. In fact, it's funny because I often mention the statistic that 40% of guns are sold privately. They're sold without background checks. They're sold not outside of gun shows. And then I've heard conservatives complain that figure, Mark, is an old figure. It's from the late 1980s. And that's true. It is from the late 1980s.
Because they haven't been able to do any studies since.
Exactly. Because
right.
they've prohibited studies since then. I suspect it's a lot higher now because since they did background checks, more people are avoiding the licensed gun dealers. So, if you're a criminal and you're insane and you want to have a weapon, that's how you're going to get them.
Yeah, and the CD, and people don't know about that the studies are actually literally prohibited.
It's true.
Although
President Obama, to his credit, did sign an executive order to get around that prohibition and to do studies again. I don't think it's the CDC, but I do know that one of his 26 or something executive orders on guns includes doing a new study under some other presidential provision. So he is...
Okay, just in line with that and with your concern about industry, did you know that 56% of the total tax subsidies go to just 4 industries?
Let me guess. Hold on. Agriculture, oil. I'm right about those two.
And oil, you're right about.
Not agriculture?
No.
Oh, wow. Oil, guns?
No. Let me tell you. Number 1 subsidy goes to the financial industry.
Of course. Pharmaceutical industry would be one of them too, right?
That includes tax accountants, of course.
All right, so
then
financial...
it goes to utilities, gas and electrics, then it goes to telecommunications, then it goes to oil and gas and pipeline.
Pharmaceutical isn't in the top 4?
Oh, no, it's down there a little ways. In terms of subsidies, it's number 10 is all they get.
We subsidize...
They pay pharmaceuticals and medical practices pay about a tax rate of about 21%.
Wait, we still subsidize the telecommunications industry?
Yes.
You mean,
yes, they pay
have you seen your cable bill lately? We subsidize them in addition to how much they're charging us?
They pay an effective tax rate of 8.2%. AT&T, et cetera, 8.2% is their effective tax rate.
You know what the effective tax rate means, by the way, because I looked this up. It's very interesting. Given that 70% of corporations are paying zero tax, the others pretty much pay the 35%. So what you have is a case where if the effective tax rate is 8%, that means 3/4 are paying no taxes and 1/4 are paying the full 35%. And the best way for a corporation to avoid taxes is to park the money abroad. That's how they do
yes.
it. And it's not just the Cayman Islands and all those fancy places that Mitt Romney parked his money.
Yeah.
But China, India, France, England, you name it.
Mongolia, it doesn't make any difference.
Right, and where they can get cheap labor. But it's interesting, now the Republicans are saying, well, if we just say you don't ever have to pay taxes on that income, I'm sure they'll bring it home. And while that's true, I look in the other direction. I say, well, what if we tax them on it, whether it's here or there, anyway? And then it doesn't matter that they might as well bring it home because it's the same tax rate.
Let me give you a wonderful, classic, tragic example of that right here in Oregon. Now, you've heard of the company Nike, right?
I have heard of Nike.
Yes, and you see
just
their
do
little
it. Just do it.
And all through March Madness and all that.
Go ahead. Just do it. Just attack Nike. Just do it.
Yeah. Just attack Nike. They have persuaded the Oregon government, and the Oregon government literally agreed to this within 2 days. 2 days they agreed to this, that they will pay taxes only. They're going to do some expansion here, supposedly, maybe 500 jobs. So if you do 500 jobs, you can get anything you want. They are going to pay taxes on products only sold in Oregon. Out of Nike, of all this industry all around the world, selling all around the country, making enormous profits. Their headquarters are here in Oregon. They will only pay taxes on goods that have been sold here. Not only that...
Wait. Only pay Oregon taxes.
Yes, pay Oregon taxes, yes.
Okay, all right,
yes,
because
yes.
they still have to pay their federal taxes.
Right.
Okay.
Well, they'll get around to that. Not only that, they have gotten in their agreement that there will be no changes in any tax laws that will ever affect them for the next 30 and or 40 years,
I don't think
depending
they
on
can do that constitutionally. You can't bind future legislatures to
constitutionally,
say.
Who gives a damn?
I mean, you cannot say if there's a change in government, our laws will hold forever. No, if there's a change in the legislature,
they've got it. They can change it for everybody else in the whole state.
I don't think that's enforceable.
But they can't change it for Nike. And now, of course, every other industry you can think of, including Intel, also headquartered here, is jumping on the bandwagon. Oh, we can get a little bill passed through that we won't get any changes in our taxes for the next 30 or 40 years.
It's interesting as a lawyer because as a matter of contract law, maybe they could say if the laws change that they have to be reimbursed, but I just don't think that's enforceable. That would be like be like the Democrats are saying, all right, we are going to, back when we had 60 votes in the Senate for all of 6 weeks, we are going to prohibit any changes to the law that allow a Republican to be nominated for anything for the next 50 years.
Can we do that? Oh, please, can we do that?
I don't know why not. Nike can do it. Just do it. Just do it. Swoosh. Just do it.
There's hope. There's hope.
That's the most I'm ever going to cite. Nike.
Let me give you one more example
Sure.
of ignorance. And again, this is something you made. You know about the oil spill in
Arkansas.
pipeline break in Arkansas?
Oh, yes. Have you seen the pictures?
Oh, yeah.
Because they're prohibited,
Yeah. Well, that's my point. Did you know about the FAA no-fly zone?
Yes, I did know about that. But tell us.
Well, do the Americans know about
I
that?
don't
Is
know.
Fox News reporting that?
I saw it on CNN,
Yeah.
I think, or MSNBC.
Yeah.
Oh, no, maybe it was Jon Stewart. Anyway.
Jon Stewart did bring it up, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they have actually, ExxonMobil has gotten the power over our government. They control the government. Let's be honest about this. They've gotten the power to say, one, they can cordon off the whole area. There can be no photographers, no press is allowed into the area. Not only that, they got the FAA to establish a no-fly zone over the ruined area where the oil is seeking into the ground and destroying the ground, the crops, and everything else in people's homes. A no-fly zone over it so that nobody can fly over to even look at it.
Well, what they're doing is they're keeping environmentalists out. And because they don't want them to document the sludge.
Of course not.
One environmentalist had the audacity to get in there.
He snuck in.
That's right, and they got pictures. This is great. One of the things that Exxon is doing is they're sweeping the sludge down the storm drains.
Mm-hmm.
You see, literally. So, and I'm sure that does nothing to clog or harm our sewage lines.
No, of course not.
Which of course taxpayers have to pay for.
Yeah.
And of course they went after him. How dare he trespass?
Did you see the picture of how they're soaking up the oil?
Yes, Bounty paper towels, I believe, quilted.
I'm sorry, what?
Paper towels.
Yeah, paper towels.
Right.
That's the science that ExxonMobil is using.
Well, they're quilted though, Terry. They're the best kind.
Yeah, right.
So don't tell me they're not doing enough.
Right. Paper towels.
Paper towels.
I mean, I wish I had stock in the paper towel industry just because of the oil companies going to be spilling everything all over the place, and now their only solution is paper towels.
And where do they throw it away after it's soaked?
Oh, probably up in
the landfill.
Landfill, or they send it to Utah, or Utah. Utah would accept it because they love the oil industry.
So Terry, what are we going to do about this? I mean, no, I'm serious. We got environmental disaster. We have corporations not paying taxes. We got the NRA insisting that every crazy person. By the way, one of the things they want to do in this gun bill I haven't even mentioned yet is they want to make it easier. Catch this, easier for the insane to own guns. See, already the rule is now that if you've been declared violently insane, you can't own a gun. You can get one through gun shows, but you can't sort of legally own one. The NRA wants it to be clear that if you haven't been violently insane in a while, you can get your gun.
Even you and I classify for that.
Even you.
Even me.
Even you after the 60s. So, they actually they think gun laws are too strict. And we all know that the violent insane need to have more guns and Americans. And if you want violent, insane people to have guns, vote Republican. Give money to NRA, because who knows? Maybe you just want to off some loved ones,
but even that argument is so bogus. And again, not President Obama. Nobody is pointing it out. That argument is pure crap, because the murders that are created in this country are not by the insane. Nobody in a gang, the average gang member who's shooting somebody, is not going to get declared insane.
No,
the husband that's shooting the wife, the neighbor that's shooting the neighbor, the son-in-law that's shooting the mother-in-law, none of these people are going to get declared as insane, except maybe after the fact, but they are actually what we call relatively normal people, and they are the ones doing 99.9% of all of the murders in the country, the average human being.
Sure, and listen, I'm all about banning guns to the violently insane. I can't, but my point is how far they're willing to go to actually protect the used to be insane, but are no longer insane.
Well,
rights.
You've got to think of this on a personal level, Mark. I mean, what's his name? The president of the NRA. I mean, the man is
Wayne
obviously
LaPierre.
Yeah, he's obviously insane. And he wants to be able to buy a gun within a year or two when there's no bill passed, and he's back to being insane.
Well, I'll give you an example though. In terms of regular people, you're talking about someone who catches their spouse in bed with someone else, or just hates their boss, or whatever. Decides to kill at the spur of the moment. Virginia had a law that lasted for, 10, 15, 20 years.
I got to talk about Virginia real quick, too. Go ahead.
No, but Virginia, which after all, Virginia guns are found in every New England state. I mean, Virginia is the gun. It's the closest place to the liberal Northeast where you can get a gun easily. But even Virginia, relatively conservative on gun culture, Virginia had a law that said you could only buy one gun a month. One gun a month. So you can still get 12 in a year. You can still get, 120 over a decade, but only one gun per month. And there were even exceptions for gun collectors, those few people who might reasonably want more than one gun in a month.
Or need a tank.
Right. Well, what that does is it prohibits a lot of the people like the crazy, the Connecticut shooter, or the Colorado shooter, or the Arizona shooter, or the California shooter. It goes on forever. It prevents people from going in and buying 5 AK-47s and going on a rampage. They can only buy one AK-47 and go on a rampage. They have to wait another month, and if they're that determined to kill people, they're not usually willing to wait a month.
But because of gun shows and no real control on registration, you can have your neighbor go in and buy you another gun. You can have your Aunt Louise go in and buy you another gun.
That's true.
And you can just keep on doing that till you get your 45 guns.
But don't worry, because Virginia's Republican legislature has just ended the one gun a month restriction. So
yeah, did you hear? Oh, they've ended that.
Oh yeah.
Good.
That's the nice bottom line to my story.
Did you hear the latest with Cuccinelli?
Oh my God!
If Cuccinelli gets to be governor of Virginia, I mean, we've got to get rid of Virginia and Texas. Sorry, Mark, you're going to have to move.
He's not going to win.
New bit?
He's not going. Yes, I know. He wants to reinforce sodomy laws.
Yes. He wants to make
He wants to make oral sex between married couples illegal.
I want to know, how does he know about oral sex?
Well, I want to know. You know what? Someone needs to ask him.
Yeah.
Ken Cuccinelli, have you ever committed sodomy?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a fair question. If he wants to make it illegal for married couples to have oral
he's married,
sex,
right?
Yes, he is. We want to know if he's
like
ever had oral sex with his wife, and he needs to answer under oath, under penalty of perjury.
And so does she.
Absolutely, she does too. And if they have, we've got to put him in jail.
And I can tell you this, if I were in any way related to Cuccinelli, no matter what sex he was, I wouldn't get near the man.
Cuccinelli? Is that what his policies would be like? If we lived under Cuccinelli, we'd all have Cuccinelli?
I think so.
I don't know. That's a pretty scary thing. Please, don't give Virginia Cuccinelli.
Right.
Sounds like an awful disease.
Oh, it is, but it can't be sexually transmitted because he's outlawed sex.
Right.
So, you know.
Maybe it's cuccinellosis.
Cuccinellosis. It could be both. Frightening.
All right, let me take one more break. Give people a chance to call in if they want to join the discussion, and maybe even try to reach Garland. Who knows where he is?
What does he know?
202-889-9797 if you want to call in. 202-889-9797. And Terry and I will be back with more of the Raucous Caucus right after this.
You're listening to WPWC We Act Radio, 1480 AM, weactradio.com.
Does your child have difficulty controlling their anger or a history of academic failure in school? Options Public Charter School offers a therapeutic learning environment with small classroom sizes and on-site counseling services to help students succeed. Options PCS is now enrolling grades 5 through 11 for the upcoming school year. For more information, call Options PCS today at 202-547-1028. Options Public Charter School. Exceptional education for exceptional students.
You're listening to WPWC We Act Radio, 1480 AM, weactradio.com.
Welcome back to the Raucous Caucus. Got about 6 minutes left. We have tried to reach Garland, and he is a no-show. We'd expect him to show up next week with a tardy slip explaining exactly why he didn't come on air today.
I hope he's not unreachable.
Unreachable? You mean as a person, as a student, as a human being?
As the president of NRA, as the president. I was almost going to say President Cuccinelli. Oh my God.
Oh, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Now you have to do penance.
Yes, I do. I'm going to be on my knees for a long time, I'm telling you.
Listen, I'll tell you, coming up in just 5 minutes, and I'm going to introduce the topic, Terry, and ask you what you think about it.
Okay.
I'm devoting a full 2 hours on the 50th anniversary of a Supreme Court decision that many Americans have never heard of. Everyone knows Brown versus Board of Education. How many Americans know the decision Gideon v. Wainwright? You ever heard of that?
Only by name, but I couldn't tell you.
Gideon v. Wainwright, 50 years ago, this month in 1963, is what established that Americans who are too poor to afford counsel and are being tried with a crime will have one provided to them by the state. The Sixth Amendment to the Constitution says that you have a right to counsel in your defense, but until 1963, it wasn't clear what you would do if you were too poor to afford a lawyer. And this decision, which has been watered down a bit, and frankly, we're going to talk and spend 2 hours talking about how hard it still is for indigent criminal defendants to get decent counsel. They get a lawyer, but it can often be a very hard, overworked public defender who's terrible. But at least the idea that even if you're too poor, you still get a chance at having a fair trial. Still not that. It is 50 years old today, and we're going to celebrate that and then talk about how far we have yet to go. But to me, Terry, this reminds me of how hard it is in America for people of limited means to get any basic rights. I mean, we know they don't get health care. We know they don't get justice. And a lot of times they don't even get the right to vote.
Well, people really do need to understand, and I don't know why I do know why, because, again, the ignorance is the industry here. People do not understand the society that they live in. We are practically in a feudal society. The elite of today are so far above the elite of any century you can pick, except maybe, Rome, that's ever existed, and it's that they control what is happening. Even if you've got that wonderful law that you are entitled to an attorney, something like 80 or higher percent of those in jail today are there through a plea bargain.
Oh,
they do not get a trial.
It's higher than 90%, Terry.
Pardon?
It's higher than 90%.
For the plea bargain?
Yes.
It's worse than I thought.
Yep.
And you think it all the way through, what is happening? Most of those, as you know, 80% of those same people, it's drug-related. Why is it drug-related? Well, because drugs are sold illegal. Why are drugs illegal? Because it's a huge money-making operation. And no matter what happens, with all that money you get by selling drugs and the cartels and everything else, you're not keeping that money in your mattress. You are investing that money. You are using that money. You are putting it in banks that will keep it relatively secret. It's, again, a money reason that the average person, if I go out and buy illegally, some marijuana in Virginia or someplace else, I can get sent to jail. If I buy it 3 times, it's an automatic sentence. A judge isn't even involved. The only defense I have is the plea bargain. And usually that plea bargain means I got to accuse you, Mark.
Yeah, that's true. You have to blame someone else. In fact, just recently, there was a 60 Minutes piece on the Central Park, I think they called them 5.
Oh, yes. I lived in Manhattan when that happened.
Yeah, there was an awful rape at Central Park in the 80s, I think it was.
Yep, I was
and,
there. Not in the park.
They found 5 black men, boys really at the time.
Yeah, 14 to 16, 18.
Who were in Central Park or nearby. They accused them all. They've all been in jail from the 80s until 2002, and it was found out, guess what? None of them were involved in the rape. The guy who did do the rape was already in jail, although not before he raped and murdered several other women. But they found these 5 black kids around, and they just accused them. And this actually comes to what's going to be my next segment, which is on Gideon v. Wainwright, because they had terrible counsel. They were locked up in a room. They were told to blame each other or they go to jail for the rest of their life.
They were individually interrogated for over 30 hours.
That's correct, without an attorney present, until finally one blamed one and then one blamed the other, and they broke down. And, of course, all of them were completely innocent. And to this day, and to New York City's everlasting shame, they have not compensated the 5 innocent people sent to jail during, their formative years from, say, age 14 to 34.
Not only have they not reimbursed him, Mark, they still have not been cleared of the crime. They've been released. I forget the legal terminology.
Right.
They have been released, but the state still maintains that, they're still guilty.
Even though we have DNA proving conclusively that they're not. So that's actually a good segue into my next segment, which is how hard it still is for people accused of a crime who can't afford a lawyer to get a decent defense. But
thank heavens it's been 20 or 30 years since I committed any crimes, and those were just crimes against the state.
Well, Terry, you have the right to remain silent about that, and I'm going to ask you to remain silent now because the Raucous Caucus is ending. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it. We'll be back next week at noon for another edition of the Raucous Caucus. Coming up,
thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Terry. Coming up, the Inside Scoop, we're going to talk about Gideon v. Wainwright. More importantly, if you're a criminal defendant, how you can get counsel in this day and age. Coming up, big show, 2 hours. We'll be right back with more of the Inside Scoop right after this. to afford a lawyer. We all can look back at cases like the O.J. Simpson case, where a very rich defendant got off with a crime that most of us think he was guilty of. But at the same time, we have poor people all across the nation who cannot afford decent counsel and are going to jail. And famously, a guy in George W. Bush's Texas, whose lawyer fell asleep while he was in trial and was charged with the death penalty. Well, we're going to talk about that for the whole 2 hours and invite you to join in and call in at 202-889-9797. My first guest is Rupal Patel. Now, Ms. Patel is a Counsel Katz Fellow in the Brennan Center's Justice Program and is specifically focused on poor people and their access to justice. Rupal, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. So let me ask you, before I get to your work personally, the Brennan Center, tell people what that is. to talk to witnesses and have a whole battery of lawyers, and you're going to have a pretty decent shot at a defense. You might even get off with a crime that you've committed. But I don't think there's been much knowledge, because those cases are so high profile, and those are shown on the news. People think that's the ordinary, when of course that's the extraordinary. In the vast majority of cases, as one of my guests pointed out, 94 to 97% of cases are plea bargained, and then the 3 to 6% that go to trial. I mean, how many of these trials are with people who are too poor to afford counsel, who have them appointed for them, and how many of them are people who actually can actually afford to pay for their own criminal defense attorney? I assume that's a tiny minority.
Yeah, it's different. The numbers range between 80 and 90% of people in the court system use public defenders. So it's a huge amount of people who rely on public defenders around the country. And one of the things that's interesting is that when this issue does come up, say, and a lot of this is related to funding issues in terms of, I know that Jonathan Rapping was just talking to you a little bit about the caseloads and stuff like that.
Right.
It costs money to hire more public defenders. And one of the things that people get upset about is they refer to, they don't, not everybody deserves a Cadillac defense, this idea that you deserve what O.J. Simpson had or whatever. But, the other question is, what if you flip that? Why not, actually? Why doesn't everyone deserve a rigorous and thorough defense?
I'm not even sure we get a moped defense.
No,
I mean, it seems to me that people are barely. Maybe we have a walker defense.
Yeah.
I mean, it's. I don't think the issue is a Cadillac defense. I mean, we have people that are going to jail for crimes they did not commit, because they're being forced to plea after 30-hour interrogations where they have no access to counsel there. That's hardly a Cadillac defense. That's more, to use our transportation metaphor, that's a railroad.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah.
So what have you discovered? I assume you've discovered wide variation, and I haven't read your book yet. I apologize. But wide variation between, say, D.C., where they have a decent, strong public defender's office, and New Orleans, which seems to be one of the worst cases.
Yeah. There is, when you talk to people who work in this field, one of the things they always cite as sort of the gold standard is D.C.'s public defender system. And also the federal public defender system is considered a stronger, better, decent model for people to look to. But I was down in New Orleans a lot last year reporting on this issue, and they had a huge crisis, and you guys touched on it a little, I know.
And there's just so many guests, and there's so much information to get out. We will take callers at the end if we have time to do so, but we got to move on because I want to get all of my very good guests that my producers found for the show. And the next guy is no slouch, of course. His name is Andrew Ferguson. He is a professor